This is Big Lou here, coming to you from the Old Guy Network in sunny Scottsdale, Arizona. Today is Monday. In my introduction video to our current project called the Genesis Plan, you heard me talk about our vision for structuring a formula to help professionals who want to at least start and build or maintain a business in today's business environment. And our approach is divided into 4 specific topics. Those topics are good design, careful planning, teamwork, and a commitment. What I want to do is talk a little bit today about our first topic, good design, and how we arrived at our subtitle, Every Builder Has His Dream. And I want to tell you how that came about and relate the story of where that concept came from. I spent about 10 years of my professional career as an advisor to a very successful real estate developer back in my hometown, Rochester, New York. His name was Tony DiMarzo. Now, Tony was one of the founders, Mark IV Enterprises. And Mark IV Enterprises built, developed, and owned hundreds of thousands of square feet of commercial real estate, thousands of residential units, thousands of single-family homes that they sold, senior living communities, and a number of other interesting business developments. And Tony was quite an individual. Well, Tony passed away this year, and he's a great friend and left me with a lot of great stories and good memories. So today's segment, as a tribute to Tony, brings me to how we came about with the idea of every builder has their dream. So I worked, as I said, for about 10 years as a trusted advisor directly to Tony DiMarzo. And during that time, we would look at all types of new construction development for Mark IV Enterprises to own and operate. And Tony and I happened to be walking and visiting a site one day and walking on the site, and it was basically just a vacant piece of land. Now, Tony had visions of how he wanted to develop that site, and we started to discuss the details of that. And as he asked me my opinion about certain things, there were a few things that didn't line up with what his vision was. I think as a polite way to offer his reluctance to agree with me, he looked at me and says, "Well, you know what, Lou? Every builder has his dream." And so that's how this all came about. Well, how is it important? Well, it's important because I think the first part of developing any business, now I'm not talking strictly about real estate, but real estate gives us kind of a real easy way to understand the complexities of developing a business today, because it's been done so many times in so many different ways. And the other part to that is that nobody has a monopoly on the success of that. Everybody has a little different approach, and I think it starts in terms of the difference of approaches with the notion that there's a dream. And whether it's a dream or whether it's a calculation, I like to segregate that approach into two different strategies. One is you have the individual who's an analyst, and you have the individual that is more of a fundamentalist. Now, what I mean by that is an analyst will look at numbers, and they will look at markets, and they will look at trends, and they will calculate what a need might be, and then they fill in the blanks and try to come up with a solution from that perspective. The other individual that I'm talking about, or the other approach, is that of a more of a dreamer or somebody who has that unique idea. They develop the idea and then engage the rest of the components from there. Well, I think in order to come up with that good design, you need elements of both strategies. You need to have the numbers and they have to be analyzed properly, and you need to have the vision and that needs to be reviewed. What I like to say is that those people who have the vision but aren't necessarily analysts will engage that part of it by finding people who are analysts and adding to their vision. And if they are the opposite, where they're the analyst to begin with, they will compile all the numbers and compile all the statistics and look to another individual who may have a vision. But in either case, the leadership there is going to be taken up in another part of our topic, which that would be the area called teamwork. We do that on Wednesday, not Monday. So let's get back to Monday's topic. Every builder has their dream. To me, the dream is we have a certain vision that we finally want to achieve. As a real estate developer, many times it starts with just a vacant piece of land. From there, that individual sees what can be done on that vacant piece of land. It may be something that comes from their childhood. It may be something that comes from what's already been created, or a combination of a number of different things. But at the end of the day, it becomes a manifestation of a dream. And that dream or vision has to be worked on in detail. I think every builder that starts in real estate understands that there has to be a good foundation. But aside from having a good foundation in the plan, that vacant piece of land has to be suitable. And what does that mean, suitable? Well, I'll give you an example. If you have a vacant piece of land and there's not any trees on it and there's just grass growing in the middle of a field, it appears to be ready to put something on. However, if you're going to put a skyscraper on a vacant piece of land, that vacant piece of land has to be able to hold that skyscraper up. So what may not be readily apparent in the initial review of that vacant piece of land may affect whether or not you can put that 10-story structure on top of it. And that means there may be rock just below the surface of the property. There may be quicksand below the surface of the property. There may be water floating 5 feet below the surface of that property. There may be contaminated material just underneath the surface of that property. And just from the initial observations, you'd never know that. Well, we have to understand what it takes to convert that dream to what I like to call the basis of design. And I'm not the only one. I didn't make that term up. That's a term that all engineers and architects and designers of all kinds, not just for real estate and construction and buildings, but everything from building cars to watches to rockets. They have to have a basis of design. They have to know what it is that is going to create the circumstances for you to complete the project. And so, in creating the basis of design, in real estate, for example, we're talking about right now a 10-story building. Well, some of the things that we want to look at, what is that 10-story building going to contain? What is it going to do? What's it going to service? Is it going to be 100 apartments? Is it going to be 100,000 square feet of offices? Is it going to be some sort of a manufacturing facility? Is it going to be a launching pad for the next starship? We have to determine what that use will eventually be. And then we have to decide what the best way to accomplish that goal might be. Is it going to be a wood frame structure? Is it going to be a concrete structure? Is it going to be a structure of steel? Is it going to be a 10-story building made out of bamboo? We need to determine that. Once we determine that basis of design, which includes the use and the best methods and means to accomplish that, we can get started on the details. And with design, the devil's in the details. So, what I hope to do over the course of the next several months is interview people who have been involved in creating those designs: architects, engineers, land use professionals, scientists, people that are involved in the design of, and as I said, not just real estate. It could be the design of a new computer program, whatever that might be, and how they arrive at it, what methods they use. This is not meant to be a classroom that talks about theory. This story that we're telling about the plan is going to be with real life examples from real life people. Over my nearly 50 years of working with individuals in the design field, I've met some very, very, very interesting people. So, what we hope to achieve in the next several months is every Monday looking to some interesting design individual that can tell their story, their unique story about a project that they found interesting and challenging, and how they were able to overcome the obstacles that present itself. And I'm going to learn pretty soon. I should be putting my other media devices on silent so that I don't interrupt our discussions like just happened now. So you'll have to bear with me. I'm not a pro at this, and oftentimes I'll be looking off into the sky. That's my way of thinking and dreaming and whatnot. And if I had a cigar in my hand, that would probably keep me from doing that, but perhaps not. Now, there's no guest for today because this is my inaugural Monday, and I'm trying to lay out what we are going to be talking about. I will relate one of my own personal stories about design. When when I was a kid, when I say kid, I don't think I was a teenager yet. My father, in the dairy business, he had a dairy, but at the same time, he was in real estate as well, and they uh, they owned and built their own stores and their own milk processing facilities and so on. And uh, I think I was probably about 12 years old. I was in the sixth grade, so whatever you are when you're in the sixth grade. My father had decided that he wanted to add on to his existing store and had to engage design professionals to go in and put together the plans for putting the addition on the store. And I spent a lot of time with my father because if I didn't go to work with him, I didn't get a chance to see him, so I went to work, which was kind of a requirement back then. And during that time, as he was trying to put the plan together, he got together with one of my uncles. And the first thing that they did, my uncle was an engineer at Taylor Instrument, and he had a flair for just figuring anything out. He wasn't an architect, he wasn't an architectural engineer, he wasn't a civil engineer, but he was an engineer. And so they got together and they went to the kitchen table at his house and they put out a piece of vellum on the kitchen table, rolled it out, and they started to get to work. And my father had a sketch that he had from the survey that came from the original construction of the building. And they sat down and they sketched out the floor plans and all the details on those plans for accomplishing the addition and the renovations of the building. But the one thing they didn't do, and my uncle didn't have a flair for it, was to do a perspective drawing of what the building looked like. And back then, we didn't have automated software that provided that service. Everything you did was drafted by hand. Well, it just so happened that I happened to be taking an art course, and during that point in time, we learned how to draw in perspective. And so I expressed to my father that I could draw that building in perspective. And he kind of looked at me like, well, okay, I'm sure you can. You're going to school. They teach you a lot of good things in school. Well, long story short, as I went home, I had a copy, or at least I had my recollection in my mind of what they were trying to do. And I sat down with my sketch pad and put my points of perspective in and designed the front and side elevation in perspective of my father's new addition. Well, as it turned out, my father thought it was pretty good. And when he went in to get the building permit for that new addition to his store, Blossom Dairy, he brought my elevation with him into the town. And that has been one of my proudest accomplishments in terms of design for my entire life. And I'll remember that story for a long, long time, hopefully. So I thought that I would relate that to you today and end on that note. Hopefully you find that interesting. And I want you to remember one thing. Being here with us will be the same as my goal. And that's try to make one person that you don't know smile every day. That's the end of the story for today.